Hey folks! For this video I finally decided to play a very old game that I first played when I was about 10 years old. The Guardian of Darkness. I discovered this game when an acquaintance of mine borrowed me a CD called Twilight. Something like this, very simple. In short, Twilight was a series of compilations or ripped games and programs from Netherlands, which were very useful in an era where the majority of people lived without fast or even decent internet connections, like me, and CD writers were still uncommon. I mean, you could still buy games from shops and newsstands, but those were different times, and these things were convenient for us youngsters. Anyway, I have no idea how these compilations were distributed and even arrived in southern Italy, and it's not even the right place and moment to deep in this. Anyway, my issue contained several very interesting games, including this very strange paranormal adventure. Back then I didn't understand anything about it, and dropped it because it was all in English, and I was still too ignorant. But somehow it stuck with me, and years later I began to associate it with the Hitman series. See, the game could be described as Hitman, but Agent 47 is an exorcist. Sounds cool, right? In truth, it's a goddamn piece of Eurojank that pissed me off continuously. And for this reason I bought on eBay a boxed copy of the Italian version. I love PC gaming. So, in the Guardian of Darkness we play as Ekna Kathar, a young exorcist descended from a royal dynasty, who during his monastic studies decided to follow among as his apprentice, after a paranormal experience that changed him. Ekna now works as an agent for the Gate, an organization that gathers special individuals from all over the world to defend humanity from supernatural threats. The game doesn't have a main menu and begins directly in the Tenebrance, an antechamber preceding the first mission, where we meet William Barnes, an old guardian who will mentor the protagonist throughout the first missions, giving him lessons and tips about the usage of certain spells. Ekna will return to the Tenebrance after each mission and receive the briefing of the next one while standing under this dome. Also, sometimes will be given some weapons, which we should not forget to pick up before entering the door. The whole game consists of a total of 10 missions, which revolve around investigating the origin of supernatural infestations within various locations. The source of the problems is always a powerful entity connected to the haunted place. Sometimes we'll need to fulfill the requirements that will satisfy the entity's discontent, which will then leave the place for the afterlife, and other times we'll have to fight as if it were a boss. What makes it all interesting is the plethora of spells we'll need to use to solve puzzles. Some objects or people will require an exorcism to interact with them. Other times we'll need to enter a trance to obtain information from corpses, and on certain occasions there's the need to open a gate that leads to inaccessible areas. Each location in the game has its own sometimes quite interesting story, and tries to be different from all the others. The first mission is set in a museum displaying a mummy and all its relics. The second in a brewery, where we'll fight against the specters of gangsters. Then there's even a fast food restaurant where the enemies are the spirits of dead customers, and even possessed hamburgers and fried old chickens. What the hell. Cryo Interactive certainly didn't lack imagination, and one of my favorite missions is set in a house where the sole survivor of a murdered family demands to find the cause of the deaths, and damn, it seems like this cat has something to do with all that.
I'm so lonely. You mustn't disturb me.
After that I liked also the 8th mission, for the best, where Ekna is called to investigate the origin of the mysterious deaths that have occurred around Lord Devender, who's about to welcome a new Italian fiancé. This game is full of combat, almost always resolved with key blasts, but the janky controls make them obnoxious, to say the least. The protagonist also dies quite quickly, often dying immediately upon entering a room. Furthermore, enemies are hit via an inaccurate auto-aim, and on top of all this, there's also the issue of managing the spirit energy, which is used to cast spells, increase their power level, and learn new ones. Believe me, managing the spirit energy in this game is a fucking pain in the ass, and to survive we'll have to forcefully use the draining spell. Basically, in each room, we can absorb varying amounts of energy multiple times, at the cost of a waiting time that doubles with each cast in the same room. Increasing the level decreases the waiting time, yes, but increases the cost, so we'll have to start at level 1, and then increase it if the drain energy is high enough. See, the game permits to select the unlocked levels of spells, and I think it's pretty neat. Defeated enemies also provide significant amounts of mana, especially in later missions, but for the first half of the game we'll have to struggle a lot, and in some missions the drain spell doesn't absorb anything, so we'll have to manage it wisely. In particular, the 60th mission called Sunset City even features cursed items that will gradually absorb our mana over time. The battle with the entity was also very difficult, and I managed to defeat it after many attempts. I had to acquire and use the spell called Spirit to win, and use the grenades instead of key blasts. Anyway, I have to tell you that I found out that there was a different and easier way to end this mission, and it's not even the only case. For example, in the second mission, the entity becomes hostile and must be fought if you dare to pick up its book. Perhaps the fight could have been avoided, but I didn't understand what to do with the beer bottles scattered around, which seemed to be linked to its hatred of drinkers.
You're gonna die, like all the other beer drinkers who ever tried pushing Ernie Williams around.
Furthermore, some missions have triggers that can ruin the investigation, making the place a nightmare to explore, and forcing the fight with the entity, like in this case. Usually, when we do something wrong, the tendrils appear, the sort of barnacles that can only be destroyed with specific magic. Also, some spells felt very underused. For example, telekinetic manipulation is used just twice, the first time to pick up this floating ticket, and later this axe. But on other similar occasions I had to cast Exorcism. I wonder why. Is that because those are magical books? Okay. Another case is the spell Send, that is required just in the first mission on the mummy, and then never again. Similar to this, the item called Datalyzer is used only in the fourth mission to calm down the entity. The first time I played that level, the freaking item didn't trigger the final cutscene, because of a bug I guess, and I had to replay the whole level starting from the Tenebrance. Also, it's not well explained the exact room where to drop the Datalyzer. I think there's a translation error, because we end up throwing it into random rooms until we guess the right one. I would also say that this game would be impossible to complete if it weren't for the Repel energy spell, which makes Ekna invincible for a limited time. Without it, I don't know how you could beat this Jankfest. Seriously. A good feature of the PC version is that we can bind the spells to hotkeys. In this way, we can immediately cast offensive, healing and defensive magic in the middle of a fight, without the need of scrolling between them, making things much easier. Anyway, the game's real threats are the technical issues. I'm not joking. Maybe I did something wrong, and there are some fixes I didn't check. Or perhaps I'm just a freaking masochist. But this game tends to crash with virtually every interaction. whether it's opening a door, reloading the game, beating an enemy, triggering a dialogue, etc. After the 100th crash, I started to have doubts about some of my life choices, like playing this game. That rant aside, the game's overall graphics certainly weren't the best in 1999, although I still appreciate the attention to detail in some textures and animations and visual effects of the spells, which change based on the selected level, which is nice. The sound compartment boasts decent music tracks, each unique for each mission, but some tend to get repetitive, and also many sound effects that luckily are not much annoying. The English voice acting on the other end is, well, pretty mediocre, and rarely I heard convincing dubbed characters. Here's a few examples.
Pardon me. Could you tell me what I'm doing here? I'm Justin Madigan. I can't remember anything. It was hot, a scorching heat, not a breath of air. And all of a sudden, a terrible gust of wind.
I'm worried. My fiancée, Emanuela Musetti, is to join me today. You'll have to watch over her. With all those rumors spread about a haunted manor.
You have bought my cookbook for me. Let us have a look, hein? Leg of mutton, sauce grande veneur. Rabbit à la royale. Oysters with champagne.
Those SOBs even took a signed portrait of the king. I love that thing more than my Cadillac, son. You see, there's this rumor says the place is haunted, like ghosts, and that makes it real hard to sell at any price.
So, that's what you want? Men are so stupid! Die, if that is your wish.
In the end, the Guardian of Darkness was, how to put it, an interesting experiment that felt pretty rushed and incomplete, and the ending even hints a possible sequel that never materialized. Pun intended. I appreciated the structure of some missions, the underlying originality, and the horrific feel of some parts, but I hated the stiff controls, and the high difficulty of the fights, not to mention the technical mess that is. I don't know if this video will ever inspire anyone to try it. Besides, it's only 5 hours long at most, but I hope I've made you discover something intriguing again. As always, a warm thanks to all viewers, and see you in the next entry. This looks interesting to rediscover.